Welcome back to Arise Prime Time, where we offer perspectives on the news and talking points of the day. I'm Constance Ikoku. As Nigeria joins the rest of the world to mark World Mental Health Day, we examine the importance of mental health. This is even more topical in the light of unprecedented economic pressures that people face today. Many Nigerians are grappling with the harsh realities of high inflation and unemployment. The economic strain has led to widespread anxiety and uncertainty in the country. As food prices soar and essential services become less affordable, many are left feeling overwhelmed. The Japa wave, where Nigerians, particularly young professionals, emigrate to seek better living conditions abroad, has torn families apart. Some are left behind while others go abroad to earn money and send back home. In some cases, the guilt associated with leaving loved ones behind is debilitating. How can Nigerians manage stress and anxiety under these circumstances? What resources are available to those in need? Joining me now to discuss on how Nigerians can manage their mental health in these tough times are Dr. Chiamaka Nwaora, a licensed psychologist at the Department of Psychiatry, Federal Medical Center, Nwaora. We also have in the studio Mr. Adegoroye, a mental health advocate. Thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Let me start with you, Dr. Nwaora. Can you describe for us, just briefly, what we mean when we say mental health?
Mental health simply means an individual's state of well-being, a state where an individual is able to cope with anxieties of life, stressors of life, is able to live productively, to deal with stress, and to have good interpersonal relationship with people around, and also to manage his or her state of well-being without breaking down.
It's a topical issue today, given the economic conditions, isn't it?
Yes,
Okay.
it is.
Yeah.
So personally, as a young person who is trying to thrive in the current landscape in Nigeria, it's something that really touches my heart. Today, when we went for we had like an immersive conference where we had the whole VR setup and everything to kind of get people to experience what it actually feels like to live in the shoes of someone who is suffering from schizophrenia or bipolar disorder. And somebody mentioned that he had a friend who tried to commit suicide because of the economical hardships. So I can just imagine how so many young people coming up and they're wondering, where's my car, where's my house, you know?
Wow.
It's crazy.
What do you personally feel as a young person in Nigeria today?
Well, besides the fact that I have to dabble in several things in order to just get like the daily urgent 2K.
Like?
For example, I'm an IT guy. I run an organization. I partner with different organizations. Currently, I am the Director of Communications at Nigeria Mental Health. So there are so many things I'm doing in order to just make sure that daily I move forward and I'm able to get like the daily bread, you know. It's not just about just doing maybe a government job as before or having one job and focusing on that because things are getting harder.
Dr. Nwaora, you have been in this sector for a long time. What are the most common mental health problems in Nigeria?
The most common mental health problems are anxiety.
Okay.
Is really much, and also depression. In fact, there was somebody that said, if your mental state is stable in this economic dispensation, then you even have a problem. So many persons are down with depression and then substance abuse, because it's also a mental health problem. You know, people use substance to cope with their difficulties, with their frustration, with their depression, with their anxiety. They tend to move to substance as a coping mechanism, though negative coping mechanism.
Right.
And also we have that of suicide ideation.
So what are the symptoms? Because some people might not even know that they have a problem. What should you be looking out for?
A lot. For depression, at a point where an individual begins to lose joy in activities previously enjoyed, begins to isolate self, begins to feel so bad and complain about everything and anything, and then begins to have these crying spells. and inability to get joy in anything. And then sometimes, depending on the level of depression, the individual may begin to have this suicide ideation and then think of low mood, alternating. Sometimes the person could be happy, some other time the person could be sad. That is when we talk about bipolar disorder. And then that of anxiety, it depends on the type of anxiety, but basically there is this fear of the unknown, fear of what will happen the next minute. So these are some of the things that an individual will begin to see, or some other person will begin to see from another person, and then you begin to suspect that this person's mental health is at risk.
So did you tell us briefly what you do, some of the things you do in your organization as it relates to mental health?
So for Nigeria Mental Health, we're part of the technical working group that is pushing to change some of the policies. I think a few years ago, just before Buhari left office, we were able to advocate and have the Lunacy Act changed. And that's a very, very strong thing that hasn't happened in many African countries. So these are the kind of things we are pushing, because it's not just about doing, but we push for those policies. So our organization, Nigeria Mental Health, focuses on those kind of policies.
Right.
Recently, we're pushing on a policy, we're trying to push for the signing of the bill, which is suicide is not a crime. Because if somebody tries to commit suicide and fails, sorry, I said suicide attempt is not a crime, yes. So if someone tries to commit suicide and fails, you shouldn't punish the person by sending the person to jail. If I'm sent to jail, perhaps I may think, okay, well, I look for the biggest guy, punch him in the face, and close my eyes because, man, he's going to help me. That's the thing we're trying to push against, because these people need help. They need our support. They need our help. So that's one of the things that we are doing with partner bodies.
So when you said that the lunacy law was changed, what changed what? What exactly? Expatiate.
Okay, so the lunacy law before, there was a way it was derogatory in terms of talking about madness and how people should react to people who have mental health challenges. But then a new act has been signed into power, and that's one of our accomplishments. I do feel people can also go on our page, www.nigeriamentalhealth.org, to read more on some of the things that we have been able to push through. Okay,
Dr. Nwaora, how has mental health evolved over the years? And
okay,
we see it also.
Yeah, I want to go back to this lunacy law of 1958, and it was in 2023 that it was now changed to Mental Health Act. You know, this Mental Health Act made it in such a way that people will be free to talk about mental health, and that is why we're talking about it now. Before now, when you hear mental health, in fact, even sometimes it surprises me, even from people who claim to be learned, once they hear mental health, they begin to feel that, oh, it means that I'm crazy, it means that I'm mad. But then when we talk about mental health, it has to encompass a whole lot of things, your ability to deal with stressors of life. So when this Mental Health Act was changed, it gave people room to talk about their mental health. It gives these expressive emotions for people to say that, oh, I am feeling bad and I need professional help, or I need help from anyone. So this Mental Health Act has really helped in people talking about mental health, and it has exposed so many persons to a lot of things that we never knew existed about mental health. So much so, like depression, like anxiety. A lot of persons don't know that they are depressed until they get down with mental health.
Right.
A lot of persons too, they don't know what they are going through until you begin to see that sign, that symptoms of dying by suicide, that suicide ideation. I don't like saying committing suicide anyway, because as we are fighting against this prevention about suicide law of death sentence, we want to also expunge the language commit suicide, as if the person is committing a crime. Sure. For someone to think of dying by suicide, it means that the person's mental health is very much at risk.
Yeah, but when you talk about help, where does one go for help for any kind of mental health? Because a lot of people might not even know where to begin from.
We have a lot of mental health practitioners out there. I work in a hospital base, in a psychiatric hospital, as a clinical psychologist. So people can go to any government-owned hospital or federal-owned hospital. That's where you can find psychiatrists and mental health professionals. Though there are some other ones that are on the online and all of that. I don't know their credentials anyway, but it's important that one should seek a professional help from hospital base, and whatever you are looking at, you should know the background of that person that claims to offer the help.
You know, Adegoroye, a lot of aggression in Nigeria today, you know, and when you meet people, whether it's on the road, you know, wherever, there's so much aggression that you tend to believe that maybe this person is actually mentally unstable and is not aware. What has been your experience, especially among young people, and the work that you do too?
As a tech person, I know that so many people are now like tapping into a few things, but like as she mentioned, some of these things may not be really credible in terms of the authority behind them. But I do know that a lot of people enjoy things like ambient music and sounds. But then on the streets, there's a high tendency, not just from the young people, but meeting an average Nigerian, maybe you're taking along, and the person's, maybe don't have change. A fight may ensue. I think when I was coming here this evening in my boat ride, I just passed by a shop and someone threw a stone right into the glass of a shop, just like that. Why? I don't know. I and the boat guy were like, oh my God, what's going on? But then so much aggression is in the land, maybe due to inflation and the economic factors and all of that. But what we do, being a tech guy, like the conference we had today, we had a section where we had a VR experience. It's called Immersive Experience, where we partnered with several mental health organizations. And part of that experience was to help people sit down and experience a kind of like virtual reality where it calms your soul and your spirit and putting you in the shoes of other people. But one thing I would like to note was that about 2 or 3 people made a comment when I explained to them the whole process. They said, yes, this device will help me understand what it means to be schizophrenic or bipolar. But then they were scared. They said, well, I have a lot going on in my own mind. And these are young people. I have a lot going on in my own mind. I don't want to now go and see what is happening in somebody's mind who is schizophrenic. Man, I don't want to be part of this VR experience. And we had to explain to them, and some of them still participated. But a lot of people are having this backlash from the activities that surround them for them to even start thinking of their own mental health.
So now that you bring that up, what's the role of technology in helping to solve this problem? And you know, what you just said sounds very techy and pricey. I don't know how many people will be able to access that.
Yes, so we do have a few people who run some of these enterprises online. We have a few partners that, or organizations, non-governmental organizations that are part of the technical working group for suicide prevention that offer free services for counseling, for therapy sessions, and they offer these free services. So there are those ones out there with call lines as well. But then there are a few others who charge. So it depends on where your pocket is. But then I won't blame people for charging because there's a surplus. If I ask you when was the last time you visited a therapist or you had a discussion with somebody talking about your mental health, perhaps most of us do it with our social groups, our moms, our dads, our loved ones. But when last did you visit a therapist? They are not easily accessible. And there are so many people, they have to charge, you know,
Right.
Time is money.
Right.
So these are some of the challenges that we have. But on the tech space, I do believe that there are so many things. I love listening to jazz. Whenever I feel really stressed, I feel maybe depressed and I feel down, I listen to jazz, it puts my heart at peace.
Wow.
So that's something I can recommend to you as
Wow,
well.
thank you so much for your recommendation. I will try that. It's Dr. Nwaora. You know, when you look at our political space, some of the actions of our politicians, you just look and say, this person is not mentally stable. You know, do you believe that's the case? Maybe people have to be checked. Politically, don't you think that's the case?
Well, people need to go for mental check. It's very important. That is why we want to remove this stigma. You know, because of the stigma, people don't want to hear about mental health. Yeah. But it's very important that everyone should check their mental health. Sometimes the politicians you mentioned, it could be frustration. It could be so many other. It could be that they even have anger issues. Anger issue is a mental health problem. Substance abuse is a mental health problem. So all of these could be that the person has that, and every little thing you see the person flaring up, there is need to see a professional that will help the person to know how to manage anger, because in therapy we have what we call CBT on anger management, where you will be taught on how to manage your anger and interpret your perception, because whatever thing an individual does is a product of perception, pattern of thinking.
Yes.
The way you think will determine the way you feel, and the way you feel will determine the way you will act.
Right.
So all of these need to be checked.
Maybe you need to, talk to the politicians and help them out. But Adegoroye, what are the biggest misconceptions you found from people while you're doing this job?
So far, I have noticed that, as she said, most people don't really value the word mental health. Whenever you associate it with yourself, it looks like as if you're already going crazy. So even today when we had people come across our booth to try and experience the whole immersive conference, so many people are even scared to go in once you mention it has to do with mental health, because they themselves don't want to retrospect and question, am I actually mentally stable? That's a question that many people are not willing to answer. Because asking yourself that question, if you find out that you're not mentally stable, oh my God. So rather they will just push it aside and shove forward. So that's my experience so far. But then there's this, as she said, there's this movement that has come up. So many mental health organizations, people are actually realizing that their mental health matters.
Right.
Yeah.
What are the biggest barriers that people face accessing health, care within the sector?
One of the biggest barrier is stigma. That's just the biggest barrier we face. Even we that are mental health practitioners, sometimes we also have that stigma attached to us, I remember one time somebody asked me, what is your profession? I said, I'm a mental health professional. I said, oh, you treat mad people? You went to university, you didn't see any other course to study? Wouldn't they bite you, Such stigma is really what is affecting a whole lot of persons. As even when someone is down with mental health, the person you hardly see people. It's now that you can see someone that is having anxiety or mild depression coming to clinic to assess mental health. Ordinarily, they come when they are insightless, and it's only the family members that will bring them at that state, because they don't want to hear psychiatry, they don't want to hear mental health, and they believe that if anybody should even see that I am in a mental health clinic, what are they going to say about me? Right. So that has been our biggest challenge, and we encourage the government indulgence to keep working so that we'll see how we can expunge this stigma around mental health.
In a few seconds, Adegoroye, when you think about the social media space, a lot of your young people are on social media. What role does it play in this as well, very quickly?
It plays a very vital role.
Right.
And that's why we are pushing for people to go online to our website and to try and go on change.org to sign the bill, because we are pushing for a new bill that decriminalizes suicide attempts. So it plays a very big role. Once we have that push online, at least the health and the politicians can now decide that, okay, this is something that needs to be paid attention to. We have seen it work, and we can also see it work again.
Dr. Chiamaka Nwaora and Adegoroye, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
It's a pleasure.
Well, that's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Do join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, it's goodbye, and thank you for watching.